According to the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, a whole food, plant-based diet focuses on having as many plant-derived foods on your plate as possible and keeping your foods as little processed as possible. It aims to prioritize eating naturally occurring foods in some of their purest form. It actually might be easier to list the foods that wouldn't be in a whole food plant-based diet, such as animal products, large amounts of fatty oils, and unnecessary added sugars, so many of which you may find in the standard American diet. Following a whole food-based diet requires some intention in one's lifestyle and consumer education, but it is possible. It's about learning how to enjoy food at its most natural, and it is part of a lifestyle in which you gradually begin to embrace all that's natural. From what I've learned from our textbook, the Lifestyle Medicine Handbook, An Introduction to the Power of Healthy Habits, following a whole food plant-based diet has a plethora of positive health benefits. For instance, studies show that switching to a whole food plant-based diet can not only help prevent many chronic illnesses, but also helps treat them, as well as improving their health prognosis. The high contents of nutrients in the daily diet improves gut health, reduces the body's inflammation, and it can promote healthy weight loss. So these three things alone are great ways to prevent chronic disease that often plagues average Americans. Some of the most common chronic illnesses we see others struggle with in our country can be improved by switching to a plant-based food diet, such as heart disease, diabetes, obesity, and more. One study that observed adults who consistently followed a whole foods plant-based diet, veganism, and semi-plant-based diets. From what I've learned from our textbook, the Lifestyle Medicine Handbook, An Introduction to the Power of Healthy Habits, following a whole food plant-based diet has a plethora of positive health benefits. Studies show that switching to a whole food plant-based diet can not only help prevent many chronic illnesses, but also help treat them, as well as improve the prognosis. The high contents of nutrients in the daily diet improves gut health, reduces body inflammation, and can even promote healthy weight loss. These things alone are great ways to prevent chronic disease that often plagues Americans. Some of the most common chronic illnesses we see others struggle with in our country can be improved by switching, such as heart disease, diabetes, obesity, and more. One study that observed adults who consistently followed a whole foods-based diet, or veganism and semi-plant-based diets, 35% of those participants reported their underlying health conditions improving or disappearing when switching to that or practicing it. 15% were able to stop medications for their conditions because they didn't need them anymore. And what was even more remarkable was half of participants experienced weight loss, averaging at about 14 pounds each. I mean, do I really have to go on? The earlier one may adapt a whole foods plant-based diet, the better their health outcome can benefit. It overall improves your sense of vitality and fulfillment and leaves your body to live in a more natural state of rhythm. I say that from my own experience, as mine paralleled what participants in the diet study reported. One study that observed adults who consistently followed a whole foods-based diet, veganism, and semi-plant-based diets, in that study, 35% reported that their underlying health conditions improved or disappeared altogether, and 15% were able to stop medications for those conditions because they weren't needed anymore. And what was even more remarkable was that half of these participants experienced weight loss, averaging at about 14 pounds each. So, I mean, do I really have to go on? The earlier one may adapt a whole food plant-based diet, the better their health will benefit. It overall improves your sense of vitality and fulfillment. and it leaves your body to live in a more natural state of rhythm. I can say that from my own experience, as mine paralleled what participants in the diet study reported. I decided to cook a vegan minestrone soup to honor the long-awaited fall weather. It all cost about $30 total at Aldi. The recipe made 4 servings, and I thought $30 was a reasonable price. I made sure to pick a soup recipe that wouldn't require me to get many ingredients, yet checked all the boxes. And sometimes I think simpler is better. And so when it comes to eating healthy on a budget, I find that to be the truth. I shared the meal with my coworkers who already have followed whole food plant-based diets for many years, several of which identify as some combination of either gluten-free, plant-based, vegan, vegetarian, and I actually have learned a lot from them about how to live a holistic lifestyle on a budget. So, yes, I did have to substitute a few things. For instance, the recipe called for Carnelli beans. I did have to substitute them with Great Northern white beans, and vegetable broth was not available. However, I did use vegetable stock and could not find a fresh bay leaf, but I used fresh thyme. So they were all minor switches, and it still worked out pretty fine. Everything was still delicious. I got many praises for it. But as far as my experience, as I was looking for a whole food plant-based recipe, I realized how few of my typical meals exclude meat or dairy products. Now, I considered myself to have a balanced diet and didn't feel much concern for a need to change anything about my habits, but this experience brought me back to when I was plant-based and vegan before COVID. And then when COVID happened, that really, paused life, including parts of my lifestyle. And so somewhere along the way, I lost my plant-based values and haven't looked back really until now. So while I do regularly include fruits, vegetables, and whole grains in my daily diet, I'd say plant-based proteins are definitely lacking. This may be due to the fact that I did eat beans for 3 straight years and tofu with little to no seasoning due to just my lack of cooking skills as a late teen. So naturally, I developed a repulsion to the thought of eating them on a regular basis again. But after making this delicious soup, my inspiration for plant-based protein recipes has been sparked. I have a lot more skills now at 25 than I did at 18, so perhaps I may swap my regular meals with more plant-based proteins, just with adequate seasoning this time. Overall, I think by exploring creative plant-based protein recipes, I'll be able to adopt them into my daily diet along with everything else. I do pretty well with eating fresh fruits and vegetables and grains, so finding a way to integrate that with other proteins shouldn't be too difficult. I just need to be intentional as I build the new habit. I think that food is not only medicine, but also art. Whenever I can find a way to put my creative energy into my dishes and immerse myself into the cooking process, I feel much more fulfillment from eating.